The galaxy has always bent to the will of the Force. It is the undercurrent of existence, binding together life, thought, and destiny itself. Jedi and Sith alike claim to understand its depths, shaping their beliefs around their interpretations. But the Force is not bound by their philosophies. It flows without allegiance, shifting in ways even the most powerful cannot fully predict. A single choice, a moment of hesitation, an alternative path, can send ripples through reality, altering what was meant to be. History remembers the Jedi as guardians of peace, the Sith as architects of destruction, and the Skywalker lineage as the fulcrum upon which the fate of the galaxy turns. But these were only outcomes of specific moments, decisions made under the weight of expectation and circumstance. What if those choices had unfolded differently? What if the Force had whispered a new path, or a single decision had splintered into an unforeseen reality? This journey is not about rewriting history, nor is it an exercise in speculation for its own sake. It is an exploration of the possibilities hidden beneath the surface of fate. The Force does not dictate a singular future. It is a current that shifts, bends, and reacts to the will of those who channel it. A Jedi Master who chose power over restraint. A Sith Lord who sought harmony instead of dominion. A warrior who abandoned the battle, allowing another to claim his destiny. There is no such thing as inevitability in a universe driven by free will. The Clone Wars were not destined to end in betrayal, just as Anakin Skywalker was not fated to become Darth Vader. The rebellion's triumph was not assured, nor was Luke Skywalker's place as the galaxy's savior. These events were shaped by decisions, by individuals standing at the crossroads of history, forced to decide in an instant what their legacy would be. Consider the moment on Cloud City when Darth Vader extended his hand to his son, offering him the chance to rule together. The Luke Skywalker that history remembers chose defiance, allowing himself to fall into the abyss rather than surrender to darkness. But the difference between light and shadow is often a single breath, a flicker of thought that might have gone another way. In another reality, Luke's hand does not retreat. His fingers tighten around Vader's, and in that moment, he does not see a tyrant. He sees his father. The Alliance loses its greatest hero. The Emperor gains an adversary he never expected, and the galaxy spirals into an era ruled by Darth Skywalker, a Sith Lord more powerful than any before him. Or take the moment in the Senate chamber when Mace Windu stood over a wounded Palpatine, his blade raised, justice within reach. The Jedi Order had spent centuries teaching restraint, preaching against passion, warning of the dangers of absolute power. But Windu saw beyond their doctrine. He saw what needed to be done, and for a fraction of a second, something within him broke. His lightsaber did not waver. The stroke was swift, final. Darth Sidious never rose again, but the war did not end. Without the Sith Lord to hold it together, the Republic fractured. The Jedi, no longer bound by their code, became enforcers of order, wielding control in the name of peace. The age of the Jedi did not die that night, but neither did it survive unchanged. Some shifts in destiny are subtle, a word left unspoken, a warning that goes unheard. When Qui-Gon Jinn brought Anakin Skywalker before the Jedi Council, his belief in the boy's potential was unshakable. The Council was less certain, and their doubts were clear. Yet had one voice in that chamber spoken louder, had Yoda perhaps given in to instinct instead of reason, the decision might have been different. Anakin would never have trained as a Jedi. The chosen one, left adrift, might have been discovered by another, someone with no intention of shaping him into a Jedi, but into something else entirely. Even those long thought to be bound to darkness could have walked another path. Darth Maul, raised in hatred, shaped by pain, was never given the chance to see the Force beyond the Sith's doctrine. Had he been taken from Dathomir by the Jedi instead of Darth Sidious, what might he have become? A warrior for justice, wielding his twin blades for a purpose beyond vengeance? Or would the fire within him have always sought an outlet, no matter the guidance he received? There are infinite realities hidden behind the choices that defined the galaxy's history. Paths untaken, victories undone, betrayals that never came to pass. The Force does not choose sides. It does not demand one outcome over another. It whispers, it nudges, it guides, but it does not control. That power lies in the hands of those who wield it. Not to destroy, but to transform. These stories are not corrections, nor are they mistakes. They are the echoes of possibilities, the voices of fates that might have been. To understand the true power of the Force, one must see beyond what was and consider what could have been. And so we begin. Luke Skywalker stands on the wind-beaten platform of Cloud City, his breath ragged, his thoughts spiraling. The words still echo in his mind. I am your father, a truth he had fought against, an idea too terrible to accept. But the truth is not a thing that can be denied, and now, with one hand severed and no escape, he is forced to see it clearly. Darth Vader extends his hand, offering a path forward. The rebellion is crumbling, the Jedi are extinct, and the Emperor's grasp tightens with every passing moment. The Republic that once stood as a beacon of freedom is a fading memory, and the Sith rule the galaxy. There is no future for the weak. There is only power, and those willing to take it. Luke's resolve wavers. For so long he has been told who he should be: a Jedi, a hero, a symbol of hope. But hope did not stop his friends from suffering. Hope did not prevent the horrors he had seen. Hope will not bring back the father he was meant to have. His hand tightens around his father's, the wind howling between them. Vader does not speak. He does not need to. The bond is sealed. The son has accepted his destiny. The Emperor senses it immediately, a disturbance in the Force, one that cannot be ignored. Darth Vader does not return alone. By his side stands his apprentice, the one who was meant to be the Jedi's savior. There is something in Luke's eyes that was not there before. A focus, a certainty, an understanding of the power that now belongs to him. He does not tremble before the Sith Lord as he once would have. He does not beg for answers or hesitate in his choices. The boy who once believed in destiny now seeks to carve out his own. The training begins without delay. The Emperor wastes no time testing Luke's limits, drawing out the darkness that had always been inside him, waiting for release. He does not resist. Where once he struggled to suppress his anger, now he wields it. The memories of his pain, of Owen and Beru's lifeless forms, of Ben Kenobi's deception, of the rebellion's constant failures, become fuel. Each lesson strengthens him, stripping away weakness and hesitation. The light that once burned within him flickers and fades, until only power remains. The Sith now have a warrior unlike any before him. Vader, bound by years of servitude and regret, fights with the weight of his past. The Emperor, though wise and calculating, is shackled by his own arrogance. But Luke has no such burdens. He is young. He is unshackled by doubt. He does not seek balance. He seeks dominion. The day arrives sooner than expected. The Emperor, believing his hold on his new apprentice to be unbreakable, fails to sense the moment his own fate is sealed. It is Vader's blade that strikes first, but it is Luke's that delivers the final blow. The throne room falls silent. The reign of Darth Sidious ends not with prophecy, but with betrayal. The cycle continues, as it always has. But Luke is not his father. He does not mourn what has been lost, nor does he hesitate in what must be done. There is no need for secrecy or deception. The new emperor does not lurk in the shadows or whisper commands through intermediaries. He stands before the galaxy, unafraid, unwavering. His rule is swift and absolute. The rebellion, already weakened, does not stand a chance. The Alliance hoped to rally around its hero, but their hero is gone. The Battle of Endor never happens. The second Death Star is never destroyed. The forces that once dreamed of toppling the Empire now scatter, leaderless and without hope. Those who resist are eradicated. Those who submit are given a place in the new order. Leia fights. She does not surrender, even as the might of the Empire bears down upon her. But Luke is always a step ahead. He knows her weaknesses. He knows her heart. When at last he faces her, she does not see the brother she once knew. She sees the man who destroyed everything she fought for. She sees the one who let Han fall into Imperial hands, who turned Lando into a tool of the throne, who ensured the rebellion's final breath. He does not kill her. He does not need to. Breaking her will is enough. She vanishes from history, lost in the Empire's endless expanse, a ghost of what could have been. Under his reign, fear replaces resistance. The galaxy no longer whispers of rebellion. Planets fall in line not because they are forced to, but because they know there is no alternative. There are no uprisings, no insurrections, no lingering embers waiting to ignite. Darth Skywalker ensures that. And so the galaxy enters a new era, one where the Empire does not rule through stagnation or bureaucracy, but through sheer, undeniable strength. The Jedi are not hunted, they are forgotten. The Sith do not scheme in the shadows, they reign. The Skywalker name, once a beacon of hope, becomes something else entirely. It is no longer a legacy of balance. It is a declaration of power. The Republic stands on the edge of collapse, its once glorious democracy strangled by corruption and inefficiency. The Senate chambers echo with endless debates, hollow promises, and power plays masked as diplomacy. The Jedi Council, once a pillar of wisdom, is blind to the shifting tides, clinging to a code that has long since lost its meaning. The people suffer, but those in power remain content to argue while the galaxy fractures. Sheev Palpatine watches this decline from the shadows. He has studied the mistakes of those who came before, charting the Republic's slow decay like a physician diagnosing a terminal disease. The Jedi refuse to act decisively, fearing the very power that could save them. The Senate, burdened by bureaucracy, cannot see beyond its own greed. The Sith, obsessed with their thirst for control, exist only to tear down, never to build. For years, he has weighed the options. His knowledge of the Force is unparalleled. He understands its depths in ways few could comprehend, yet he has never sworn himself fully to the Sith. Their teachings hold truth, but their philosophy is flawed. The pursuit of power without purpose is hollow. The Jedi's fear of passion is weakness. If the galaxy is to be saved, it will not be through tradition, but transformation. And so, the future shifts. Palpatine does not seek out Darth Plagueis. He does not become an apprentice bound by ancient laws that serve only to chain those who would shape the future. Instead, he walks a different path, using his influence in the Senate not to manipulate, but to rebuild. His speeches rally worlds that had lost faith in the Republic. His political maneuvering roots out corruption, not for personal gain, but for stability. He does not play the role of the humble politician, pretending to be powerless while orchestrating his rise. He moves openly, gathering allies who recognize the truth. The Republic cannot survive without control. The Jedi Council watches him with suspicion. They have seen strong leaders before, men and women who spoke of peace while sharpening their knives in the dark. But Palpatine does not challenge them. He approaches them not as an adversary, but as a necessary force for change. He does not speak in riddles or hide his ambitions behind secrecy. He tells them the truth. Their order is failing. Their rigid adherence to the past blinds them to the dangers of the present. The dark side is not a force to be feared, but one to be understood. The Jedi have spent millennia fighting shadows, yet they have never truly grasped what those shadows are. The Republic does not need warriors bound by outdated traditions. It needs leaders. It needs Jedi who can see beyond their ancient texts and embrace the reality of power. Master Yoda listens. Of all the Jedi, he alone understands the weight of time, the cycle that has repeated itself over and over again. He sees the fractures growing in the Order, the arrogance that clouds their vision. He does not trust Palpatine, but he cannot deny that the Republic is crumbling. The Force does not speak in certainties. It whispers possibilities, and in this moment, it whispers that change is coming, one way or another. The alliance forms. Palpatine does not seize control through war, but through persuasion. The Clone Wars never begin. The Separatists are not pushed into conflict by Sith manipulation. Instead, their grievances are heard, their concerns addressed. The Republic shifts into something new, not an empire born of conquest, but a system governed by strength. The Jedi Order does not fall, but it does not remain the same. The old code is rewritten. The dogma that forbade attachment, that demanded suppression rather than understanding, is discarded. Jedi are no longer monks removed from the galaxy. They become its architects. They are trained not only in the Force, but in leadership, in governance, in war and diplomacy alike. Not all accept this change. Some cling to the past, refusing to follow a path they see as dangerous. There are whispers of rebellion, of Jedi who fear what this new order represents. But there is no purge. There is no war. Those who wish to leave are not hunted, but they are no longer welcome. The Jedi who remain are those who understand that peace is not maintained through passivity, but through control. Palpatine stands at the head of this new republic, not as Emperor, but as Supreme Chancellor with powers that no one dares question. He is no longer a manipulator working in the dark. He does not need to be. He wields influence with precision, shaping the galaxy as he sees fit, not through deception, but through undeniable results. There are no Sith Lords plotting in the shadows, no secret apprentices waiting to strike. The dark side is not something to be feared. It is a weapon, one that those in power must understand. The Jedi who embrace this philosophy rise to levels of power their predecessors never imagined. They are warriors, but they are also rulers. They enforce order, but they do not destroy those who resist. They do not fear their own strength. But peace has a price. The Republic is strong, but freedom is secondary to stability. The Jedi no longer serve the people. They govern them. Their wisdom is unquestioned, their authority absolute. The Senate still exists, but it does not rule. Democracy survives, but only within the limits Palpatine allows. Dissent does not spread, because there is no place for it to grow. There is no war, there is no rebellion, there is no empire. The Republic thrives. At what cost? Theed's power generator hums with unnatural energy. The air is thick with the remnants of battle, the stench of burnt ozone clinging to the walls. Darth Maul lies at their feet, his body split in two, his yellow eyes frozen in a silent scream. His hatred lingers, seeping into the room, wrapping itself around the victors like an unseen shadow. Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi should feel triumph. Instead, they feel something else entirely. It is not relief that washes over them, nor the satisfaction of justice served. It is a hollow victory, an unease that grips them as they stare at the corpse of their enemy. Qui-Gon, the master who had always questioned the rigid doctrines of the Jedi, sees something more than just a fallen Sith. He sees the raw power Maul wielded, the strength that made him nearly unstoppable. It was not skill alone that kept him alive against two Jedi. It was his fury, his absolute commitment to the dark side. Obi-Wan should be relieved that his master survived, but instead, he feels something else entirely. He had fought with everything he had, yet still, he barely survived. Had Qui-Gon not intervened, had Maul's blade moved a fraction faster, it would have been his body lying broken on the floor. He had been weak, and weakness had nearly cost them everything. In the days that follow, the Council hails their victory as a sign that the Sith remain nothing more than scattered remnants of a forgotten past. But Qui-Gon knows better. He had felt Maul's hatred in those final moments, had sensed something far greater lurking beyond the threshold. The Sith were not gone. They had never truly been gone. Their strength had merely been hidden. Qui-Gon is not the only one who sees the truth. Obi-Wan carries the weight of that battle with him, the knowledge that he had been outmatched, that Maul had exposed something he could never admit to the Council. He had fought with anger, and it had saved him. The Jedi teach that emotion is a path to ruin, but without it, he would be dead. He is no longer convinced that the Jedi code is absolute. It begins with questions. Qui-Gon speaks of the living force, of a power beyond the narrow constraints of the Jedi's teachings. He speaks of balance, not as the eradication of darkness, but as the mastery of it. Obi-Wan listens, and for the first time, he understands what his master has been trying to teach him. When the time comes to train Anakin Skywalker, the shift is subtle. The Jedi Council hesitates, sensing uncertainty in Qui-Gon's methods. But they allow it, unaware of how deeply their teachings have already been abandoned. Anakin's training is unlike anything that has come before. He is not taught to suppress his emotions. He is taught to wield them. Fear, anger, passion, these are not to be avoided. They are fuel. Obi-Wan, once the embodiment of Jedi restraint, now instructs his apprentice in the ways of controlled aggression, showing him how the Force is a weapon, not just a tool. Qui-Gon watches, his faith in the old ways fully eroded. The Jedi sense the change, but by the time they act, it is already too late. The war that erupts is not the Clone Wars as history remembers them. It is not Sith Lords manipulating from the shadows. It is a reckoning from within. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan do not seek to conquer the Republic, nor do they strike with reckless destruction. They present themselves as something else entirely, not Sith, not Jedi, but something new. A force that understands power, that embraces the true nature of the Force, rather than shackling itself to ancient dogma. The Jedi Order fractures. Some follow them, recognizing the limitations of the old ways. Others stand against them, unwilling to forsake the path they have sworn to protect. Anakin, now a warrior unmatched in the galaxy, leads the charge against those who would resist. He is not Darth Vader. He never falls into servitude. He is something else entirely, a champion forged in the fire of his master's vision. Mandalore becomes the seat of their power, a world of warriors, unshackled by the constraints of Jedi law, is a natural stronghold. Duchess Satine Kryze, once Obi-Wan's forbidden love, watches as the man she once knew becomes something unrecognizable. The pacifist ideals she fought for crumble beneath the weight of inevitability. The Republic does not fall overnight, but the cracks widen with each passing year. The Jedi who remain loyal to the Council are forced to fight not against an external threat, but against those who once stood beside them. It is a war of philosophy as much as it is a war of blades. Obi-Wan, the negotiator, now speaks with the authority of a ruler. Qui-Gon, the defiant master, becomes the mind behind their growing empire. The Jedi teachings they once followed are nothing but faded memories. By the time the Republic understands what has happened, it is already lost. The Jedi Order, once protectors of peace, is nothing more than a fractured remnant of what it was. And Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, stands at the center of it all, not as a fallen hero, but as the harbinger of a new age. The Jedi Temple is silent. The scent of burning archives lingers in the air, mingling with the distant echoes of battle beyond the walls. Yoda stands at the center of the grand chamber, his eyes closed, his presence heavy with the weight of the decision before him. The war is lost, but the Jedi are not yet defeated. Not if he chooses a different path. The pieces have been set for too long. The Sith have played their hand well, weaving themselves into the Republic's highest offices, corrupting from within. Palpatine's deception has gone unchecked for years, and now, as the Jedi fall and the Republic collapses, the moment of truth arrives. The Grand Master has spent 9 centuries guiding the Order, but guiding is no longer enough. The galaxy does not need wisdom, it needs control. He does not flee. He does not go into exile. He does not leave the fate of the galaxy in the hands of destiny. He seizes it. When the doors of the Senate chamber open, it is not the triumphant Sith Lord who steps forward to declare his rule. It is Yoda. His robes, once the mark of a Jedi teacher, now carry the presence of an emperor. The Senate, already expecting the end of the Republic, does not resist. The Jedi, broken but not yet extinct, do not question. The Force moves, and those attuned to it feel the shift in its will. The old ways must end. Palpatine never finishes his grand plan. His rise is interrupted, his ambitions shattered before they can take root. He sees it too late, sees the mind greater than his own, sees the wisdom that has been sharpened by centuries of patience, sees the Jedi Master who has played the role of pacifist long enough. Sidious, the architect of galactic war, becomes nothing more than another lesson in failure. His power is nothing before the one who has truly mastered the game. With Palpatine gone, the Republic does not fall into imperial tyranny. It does not crumble into chaos. It transforms. Yoda does not take power out of greed, nor out of anger, but out of necessity. The Jedi have spent generations maintaining peace through diplomacy and restraint, but the galaxy has proven that peace cannot be maintained through words alone. The Clone Wars did not happen because the Republic was too strong. They happened because it was weak. Weakness invites destruction. There will be no second attempt, no Sith resurgence, no hidden apprentices waiting in the shadows. The Jedi will no longer be defenders who react to threats. They will be the hand that shapes the future. The restructuring is immediate. The Jedi Order is no longer a council of advisors. It is the ruling force of the galaxy. The Senate remains, but its power is reduced to governance under Jedi oversight. The clones, no longer needed as tools of war, become enforcers of stability. The very army bred for conflict is repurposed into an instrument of absolute order. Not all Jedi accept this. Some refuse to embrace the new philosophy, clinging to the old teachings. They call it betrayal. They see it as corruption. But Yoda is not blinded by sentiment. He offers them a choice: serve the new order or step aside. Those who resist find themselves exiled, their voices fading into obscurity. The new Jedi Empire has no room for weakness. The prophecy of the Chosen One is rewritten. The balance of the Force was never about eradicating the Sith. It was never about restoring the Jedi as they once were. Balance is control. Balance is the removal of chaos. Anakin Skywalker, the one destined to shape the future, is not cast aside as a rogue to be feared, but molded into something greater. He does not become Vader. He does not fall to Palpatine's whispers. Under Yoda's rule, he is reforged, his passions honed into a force of order rather than destruction. The raw power that once made him dangerous is refined, transformed into an instrument of stability. He does not rebel, because there is nothing left to rebel against. There is no Sith to tempt him, no Jedi Council to restrict him, only a single unified will guiding the galaxy forward. Planets that once wavered between allegiance and independence now have no doubts. Resistance does not grow, because resistance has no room to breathe. The Jedi no longer operate in secrecy, no longer whisper their philosophies in temples hidden from the public. They stand in the open, their rule unquestioned. The Force itself feels different, more focused, more controlled. This is the Republic perfected. There is no war, because the cause of war has been removed. There is no debate, because debate is what allowed corruption to spread. There are no rebellions, because there is nothing to rebel against. The galaxy does not fear its rulers, it obeys them. Yet even in absolute order, a question lingers. Has balance truly been achieved? Or has something vital been lost? The night on Coruscant is restless. The city never sleeps, its lights stretching endlessly beyond the Jedi Temple, a galaxy of its own. Inside, Anakin Skywalker paces, his mind a battlefield of uncertainty and fear. The visions have returned, Padme dying, his power slipping through his fingers. The more he tries to banish them, the stronger they become. He had sought guidance in the past, only to be met with caution and restraint, but not this time. For the first time, he makes a different choice. He turns not to Palpatine, whose whispered reassurances have already begun to coil around his mind, but to the one person who has stood by him from the beginning, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Their meeting is not planned, nor is it gentle. Anakin's words are sharp, edged with frustration. He speaks of his fears, of the visions that torment him, of the impossible choices before him. His master listens, silent at first, sensing the depth of Anakin's turmoil. And then, instead of offering a lecture, Obi-Wan does something Anakin never expected. He trusts him. There is no rebuke, no dismissal of his emotions. There is no warning about attachment or the dangers of fear. Instead, Obi-Wan speaks as a friend, not just as a Jedi. He tells Anakin the truth. The Jedi do not have all the answers, but neither does Palpatine, and a man like Sheev Palpatine, no matter how wise he appears, does not offer knowledge freely. Every lesson he gives is a hook. Every word is a test. Anakin listens, but doubt still lingers. If the Jedi cannot help him save Padme, what choice does he have? Obi-Wan, seeing the crossroads before his apprentice, refuses to let him face it alone. Together, they seek the wisdom of Yoda and Mace Windu, revealing what Anakin has learned. The Council's reaction is not one of condemnation, but urgency. The Chancellor is no longer just a political leader. He is something far worse, a Sith Lord. This time, Mace Windu does not go alone. When he moves to arrest Palpatine, he does so with Obi-Wan and Anakin at his side. The battle is swift, brutal. Sidious, stripped of the element of surprise, unleashes his full fury. But Anakin is no longer in the palm of his hand. The doubt that once held him back is gone, replaced by the clarity of his choice. When Sidious turns his blade toward Obi-Wan, Anakin acts. A single strike, a single moment. The Sith Lord falls, and with him, the darkness that had been growing unseen within the Republic. The war does not end in betrayal. There is no Order 66, no massacre of the Jedi. The Clone Wars still rage on, but now the battle is clear. There is no longer a shadow controlling both sides. The Republic fights for survival, but this time it does so with its eyes open. Anakin does not become Darth Vader. He does not fall to grief, to rage, to desperation. But he does not walk away unchanged. Palpatine had offered him the illusion of power, but in his fall, he leaves behind a truth Anakin cannot ignore. Power alone is not the enemy. For too long the Jedi have feared it. They have taught restraint, yet they have failed to recognize that control is not the same as mastery. Strength is not a path to darkness, unless it is wielded without purpose. The Jedi teachings must evolve. If they do not, they will fall to the next threat, just as they almost fell to this one. And so, change begins. Anakin does not claim the title of Grand Master, but his influence is undeniable. The Jedi Code, once rigid, begins to bend. Attachments are not forbidden, but understood. The concept of balance is no longer just words, but action. Passion is not shunned, but tempered. The Jedi of the past fought to preserve tradition. The Jedi of this new era fight to ensure survival. The Clone Wars end not in betrayal, but in victory. The Republic does not become an empire. Democracy survives, though it is reforged in fire. The Jedi do not fade into legend. They remain. And Anakin Skywalker, once on the brink of becoming a Sith, becomes something far greater. Not the chosen one who brings balance through destruction, but the one who ensures it through vigilance. Yet vigilance is its own burden. The Sith have been defeated, but darkness does not disappear. It waits, it shifts, it changes, it finds new forms. Anakin knows this, just as he knows his place within it. He will stand against the storm, no matter how many times it comes. Not as a warrior of vengeance, not as a weapon of the Republic, but as a Jedi. The Senate chamber is drenched in flickering red and purple light. Palpatine stands at its center, his true nature finally exposed. Mace Windu's saber hums with raw energy, his presence unwavering, his mind clear. He has always known darkness, always walked its edge. Now, as he stands against the Sith Lord who orchestrated an entire war, he sees what must be done. Shatterpoints. He has always seen them, the cracks in people, in events, in fate itself. And now he sees the truth as clearly as if the Force had whispered it into his ear. The Jedi were never meant to serve. They were never meant to advise politicians, to play the role of guardians while the galaxy tore itself apart under weak leadership. The Republic was not failing because of the Sith alone. It was failing because the Jedi had allowed it to. As the duel rages, Palpatine lashes out with his full fury. Windu absorbs every strike, channeling the dark side's power through his mastery of Varpad, turning his enemy's rage against him. The Senate trembles beneath their fight. Anakin Skywalker stands in the doorway, torn between duty and desire, his destiny balanced on a blade's edge. In another timeline, Windu would hesitate. He would see Anakin's uncertainty as weakness, Palpatine's pleas as deception, and he would make the same mistake the Jedi had always made, underestimating the true nature of power. But not this time. The killing blow is swift, final. Windu's saber carves through Palpatine's chest, his fall not accompanied by an explosion of dark energy, but by a silence that reverberates across the Force. Anakin gasps, his instincts screaming that something is wrong, that this moment has altered everything. And it has. The Senate doors remain shut. The Republic will not descend into empire. There will be no Emperor Palpatine, no Darth Vader, no hunted Jedi. But the cost is something no one can yet comprehend. Windu does not lower his blade. He turns to Anakin, his golden eyes locked onto the Chosen One. The Force trembles between them. This is the moment that will define the future. Anakin expects to be reprimanded, to be cast aside, to be told he was foolish to hesitate. Instead, Windu speaks with the weight of inevitability. The Jedi were never meant to be weak. It is not a condemnation. It is a statement of truth. The Jedi Code was built on restraint, but restraint had brought them here, to the brink of extinction. The Sith had flourished because they understood what the Jedi refused to see. Power shapes destiny, and only those willing to wield it without fear can claim the right to rule. Anakin does not turn away. He listens. The council gathers, shaken by what has transpired. Some demand that Windu step down, that he answer for his actions. He does not argue. He lets them speak, lets them recite their ancient laws, their warnings of corruption. And then, with the weight of Shatterpoint clarity, he dismantles their illusions. You sent Jedi to war, knowing it would destroy us. You sat in these halls while the Sith reshaped the galaxy. You followed the code, and the Sith followed power. Tell me, who won? Silence. Windu does not wait for their acceptance. He has already seen the path forward, and he will not be bound by old doctrine. The Jedi must evolve, or they will fall. The Force is neither light nor dark. It is strength, will, purpose. It is control. The Republic does not dissolve into dictatorship. It is reforged under a new vision. The Jedi no longer act as mere warriors and diplomats. They become rulers, keepers of law, enforcers of balance. The Senate remains, but under Jedi oversight. The clone army, no longer bound by political games, answers to one will. The Purple Order is born. Jedi-Sith hybrids, forged from the strongest among them, taught not to fear power, but to master it. Emotion is not weakness, it is fuel. Passion is not forbidden, it is tempered. Power is not corruption, it is responsibility. Not all accept this new path. Some flee, seeking exile rather than alignment. Others fight, unwilling to accept that the Jedi Order they once knew is gone. Windu does not relish their loss, but he does not mourn them. Those who stand in the way of balance must be removed. Anakin stands at his side, his destiny reshaped. He does not fall to the dark, but he does not remain the boy the Council once doubted. He is reforged, his strength no longer a danger, but a foundation for something greater. The Jedi no longer serve, they rule. And under Mace Windu's vision, the galaxy does not resist. It obeys. The carbon freezing chamber was meant to be temporary. A precaution, nothing more. But when Han Solo is thawed, something is wrong. The cocky smuggler who once laughed in the face of death is gone. In his place, there is only silence. The process had done more than suspend his body. It had fractured his mind. Conscious but helpless in frozen torment, his thoughts stretched endlessly across time, a constant awareness of his own imprisonment. The darkness of the void whispered to him, feeding his growing hatred. When he finally emerges from the slab, his eyes burn with something new, something raw. The rebellion had come to save him. Leia had risked everything to bring him home. But the man they find is not the one they lost. He stands in Jabba's throne room, watching as chaos unfolds around him, yet he does not move to help. His fingers flex, his body trembles, not from exhaustion, but from something deeper. The first sign comes when Jabba orders him to be executed. Han does not reach for a blaster. He does not rely on luck. Instead, the air around him shifts. His captors hesitate, hands faltering on their weapons. The tension is suffocating, thick with something unseen. And then the screaming begins. The guards collapse, clutching their throats as an invisible force constricts them. Leia stares in horror. Luke, fresh from his own brush with darkness, reaches out through the Force and feels it. Han Solo is changing. He does not need training. He does not need a master. The anger that had sustained him in the void now fuels something greater. The Force sensitivity buried deep within him awakens, violent and unchecked. He was never meant to be a Jedi. He was never meant to follow anyone. The Force does not guide him. It bends to his will. Leia reaches for him, pleading, but Han does not answer. There is no warmth in his gaze, no love, only calculation. The betrayal is quiet. He does not strike her down. He does not rage. He simply walks away. Jabba's empire does not crumble. It is seized. Han does not return to the rebellion. He does not rejoin his friends. He has no interest in their war. The galaxy's rulers play their games, but they all answer to the same truth. Power belongs to those willing to take it, and Han Solo has nothing left to lose. The Hutt cartels fall in weeks. Smugglers and bounty hunters who once laughed at his name now kneel before him. The Underworld, long divided, now has a single ruler. He takes Jabba's palace, but not as a trophy. It is a throne, and from it he watches the galaxy burn. The Millennium Falcon, once a symbol of freedom, becomes something else entirely. No longer a smuggler's escape, it is a warship, its weapons modified, its systems enhanced beyond recognition. Its speed is unmatched, not because Han needs to run, but because his enemies never see him coming. Chewbacca, bound by a life debt, refuses to leave. But loyalty is not the same as choice. Han does not set him free. He does not send him away. The Wookiee remains at his side, not as a partner, but as a weapon. The chains are not physical, but they may as well be. The laughter they once shared is gone. In its place, only obedience. The rebellion cannot ignore him. They send envoys, old friends, desperate to pull him back. Lando, Leia, even Luke. Each one tries to remind him of who he was. Each one fails. The truth is simple. Han Solo died in the carbonite. What remains is something else. A king without a crown. A warlord without an army. A force of nature with no allegiance but his own. The Force was never a guide. It was a burden. But now, it is his to wield, and the galaxy will never forget his name. The boy stands before the Jedi Council, his red skin a stark contrast to the pristine white floors of the chamber. His horns, small but distinct, mark him as something rare, a Zabrak child taken not by the Sith, but by the Jedi. Darth Sidious had been watching, waiting to claim him, but the Force had willed otherwise. Instead of falling into darkness, Maul had been found. Mother Talzin, sensing that her son's fate lay elsewhere, had chosen a different path. She had sent him away, not as an offering to a Sith Lord, but as a plea for salvation. The Jedi were reluctant. They saw the anger in the child, the fire burning beneath his skin. But Master Yoda sensed something deeper. The rage was not his nature. It was survival. Left unchecked, it would consume him. But if guided, if tempered, Maul could become something more. He trains harder than any other initiate. Where others struggle with patience, he is forced to master it. The Jedi code is a chain around his instinct, and yet over time, he learns to embrace it. His combat prowess is undeniable. By the time he is a Padawan, few can match him. The Temple watches him closely, wary of his passion, yet unable to deny his discipline. And then, years later, his brother arrives. Savage Opress is no longer a warrior sculpted by Sith alchemy, but a boy still untouched by war. The Jedi take him in at Maul's request, and the brothers train together, pushing each other to greater heights. Unlike his older sibling, Savage is not filled with a simmering rage. He is steady, calm, a natural counterbalance to Maul's intensity. Together, they redefine what it means to be Jedi. By the time the Clone Wars begin, Maul has become one of the Order's most formidable warriors. His unorthodox fighting style, born from the aggressive techniques of his Zabrak lineage and refined by Jedi discipline, makes him unpredictable. He does not rely on brute strength like Mace Windu or overwhelming agility like Yoda. He is fluid, every motion a calculation, every strike a step ahead. Savage, standing at his side, embraces a different path. While Maul embodies motion, Savage becomes the anchor. His power is immense, his presence a shield against the tide of war. Where others falter under the weight of battle, he endures, holding the line as his brother moves like a storm through the battlefield. Together, they change everything. When the Jedi face Count Dooku, it is Maul who senses the Sith's hidden doubts. He knows what it means to be shaped by expectations, to carry a weight that is not truly his own. Instead of simply fighting Dooku, he speaks, he challenges, and the Sith Lord, for the first time, hesitates. Sidious watches from the shadows, his plans unraveling. Maul was meant to be his apprentice, a weapon forged in hatred. Instead, he has become something else entirely. A Jedi without fear, a warrior without hesitation. The war continues, but its course shifts. The Jedi Order, once rigid and cautious, begins to change. The brothers have shown that strength does not mean arrogance, that passion does not mean corruption. The old ways are questioned. The Jedi do not abandon their code, but they begin to understand that balance is not the absence of emotion. It is mastery over it. When Order 66 comes, it does not come as a surprise. Maul and Savage have seen the fractures in the Republic, the slow erosion of democracy beneath Palpatine's grip. They are ready. They stand at the temple's gates, not as victims, but as protectors. The clones, trained to kill without question, hesitate in the face of their might. Their movements are too fast, their strikes too precise. They do not fight with desperation, but with purpose. And they are not alone. The Jedi, scattered and divided, find something they never expected in Maul, a leader. He is not a politician, not a strategist in the way the Council had hoped. But he is a warrior who understands battle, who knows how to command without demanding. He does not inspire through words, but through action. The Jedi do not fall. Instead, they go to war. The brothers lead the resistance, forging alliances in places the Order once ignored. Mandalore, once a world left in chaos, now rises to their call. The Night Brothers, once outcasts, become warriors of the light. Sidious, seeing the danger, moves against them. He has watched Maul defy fate for too long, has seen him turn every advantage into a weapon of the Jedi. The final confrontation is inevitable. The Sith, who once sought to claim him, now seek to destroy him. But Maul does not fight alone. Savage is with him, stronger than ever. The Jedi, once blind to the truth of the Republic's corruption, now see clearly. The Night Brothers, once tools of the Sith, now stand in defiance of their former masters. And as Sidious faces the warriors he failed to corrupt, he realizes the truth too late. Maul was never his. He was always meant to be something greater. The fall of Qui-Gon Jinn changes Count Dooku, but not in the way Sidious had hoped. The corruption of the Republic is undeniable, the Jedi Order is complacent, and the Senate serves its own interests instead of the people. In another timeline, these realizations would have driven Dooku into the waiting grasp of the Sith. But here, the loss of his apprentice does not make him bitter. It makes him resolute. He does not leave the Jedi Order. Instead, he seeks to reshape it. Dooku is no fool. He knows the Senate will never willingly relinquish its grip on power, and he sees how the Jedi have become little more than enforcers for a decaying system. The Republic, a bloated bureaucracy, strangles itself with endless debates while the Outer Rim burns. The Jedi, bound by tradition, refuse to acknowledge that their own stagnation has made them blind. If the Order is to survive, it must evolve. The Council resists him at first. They see his growing frustration, his willingness to challenge doctrine, and they fear it. But Dooku does not act out of anger. He acts out of necessity. He speaks not of rebellion, but of reform. He forces them to acknowledge what they have long ignored, that neutrality is not the same as justice, that power, when tempered by wisdom, can be a force for good. With his influence growing, Dooku takes the first step toward reshaping the Order by dismantling its blind servitude to the Senate. The Jedi must not be weapons of the Republic, nor should they be bound to a single government. They must return to their original purpose, not as generals, but as guardians of peace and knowledge, independent of political corruption. The Senate, threatened by this shift, does what it always does. It seeks control. It moves against him with subtlety at first, whispering fears of a rogue Jedi seeking dominion over the Republic. But Dooku is prepared. His mastery of diplomacy, honed through years of noble upbringing, allows him to counter every accusation before it takes root. His connections across the core worlds make him untouchable. And when political maneuvering fails, his skill with a blade ensures that no threat reaches him unchallenged. Dooku's Makashi, elegant and precise, becomes a symbol of the new Jedi philosophy: control over chaos, refinement over recklessness. He does not fight with brute strength, nor does he waste motion. His every move is calculated, his every strike efficient. Even among the Jedi, there are few who can match him. As his influence grows, he begins to seek allies beyond the Order. The Republic's corruption extends far beyond the Senate chamber, and he knows that reform cannot come from within alone. He reaches out to planetary leaders, to independent systems tired of being ignored. He gathers voices that the Senate would rather silence, forming a coalition of those who believe in true governance, not through war, but through restructuring. The Jedi Order begins to change. Dooku leads the creation of a new system, one where Jedi are no longer bound to Coruscant, but serve where they are needed. Training centers are established in the Mid and Outer Rim, allowing Force-sensitive children to learn without abandoning their homeworlds. The Jedi become advisors, mediators, scholars, and defenders, but never tools of war. The Clone Wars never happen. Palpatine, robbed of the chaos he needs to rise, watches as his plans crumble. Without the Jedi serving as generals, there is no pretext for turning them into enemies of the Republic. The Kaminoan clone project, once secret, is exposed before it can be fully weaponized. The Separatist movement, which in another timeline would have been a Sith deception, is preemptively dismantled by Dooku's negotiations. The Sith Lord waits in the shadows, seeking his opportunity, but there is none. Dooku has done what no Jedi before him dared to attempt. He has outmaneuvered Darth Sidious, not with war, but with wisdom. The Republic, once on the verge of collapse, begins to rebuild. Systems that would have seceded now find a voice within a restructured Senate. The Jedi, now free of political chains, serve as guardians of peace across the galaxy, rather than enforcers of a dying regime. The balance shifts, not through prophecy, but through choice. Dooku's leadership is not without its burdens. He remains wary of those who would undo his efforts. He knows that power, even when used with the best intentions, must always be tempered. But he does not waver. He has dedicated himself to the path of the Jedi, not the Order as it was, but the Order as it must be. And in the end, he does what the Sith never expected. He wins. Ben Solo stands on the edge of destiny, but in this reality, he does not fall. The rage that festers inside him, the weight of legacy, the expectation of greatness, the hunger for power, never fully consumes him. He does not slaughter his father. He does not submit to Snoke. The darkness calls, but he does not answer. Instead, he redefines it. The heir to Vader was meant to become Kylo Ren, a blade forged in the fires of the First Order. But here, the moment of transformation is different. Ben Solo does not let his pain define him. Instead of severing his past, he claims it. He sees what neither Jedi nor Sith have ever understood. Control is an illusion. The Force is not meant to be divided into light and dark, into absolutes. Balance is not a compromise. It is a new way. Ben does not fall to the light. He does not fall to the dark. He stands between them, and in doing so, he denies both their power over him. The Knights of Ren, in another timeline, would have been his enforcers, his twisted disciples of destruction. Here, they are something else. They are warriors without a master, bound by their hunger for power, but lacking purpose. And Ben gives them one. He does not reject their darkness, he tempers it. He does not demand their obedience, he earns their loyalty. He strips away the mindless destruction, the blind devotion to chaos, and in its place, he teaches discipline. The Knights become something new, not Sith, not Jedi, but something outside both, a brotherhood of balance. Their existence shakes the galaxy. The Resistance does not trust them. The remnants of the First Order see them as traitors. The Jedi, those who still cling to the old ways, view them as heretics. But Ben does not seek their approval. He does not seek war either. He seeks something far greater. He seeks freedom. The Jedi fell because they refused to evolve. The Sith crumbled because their ambition devoured them. The cycle repeats endlessly because both sides cling to a doctrine that demands conflict. But Ben Solo has learned the truth. There is no true victory in destroying an enemy. The Force does not want peace. It does not want war. It simply is. And so, he walks the path that neither Skywalker nor Palpatine ever could. His new order is built in the ruins of the past. It does not reject emotion, but it does not surrender to it either. It does not demand selflessness, nor does it encourage greed. The Force is not a tool. It is a current, ever-moving, ever-changing. To fight against it is to drown. To embrace it fully is to lose oneself. One must learn to stand within the storm without being consumed. Ben is not a savior. He does not seek to redeem the Jedi or resurrect the Sith. He does not care for labels, for ancient orders that have long since failed. He seeks only understanding, and that, more than anything, makes him dangerous. The galaxy does not know what to do with him. He is a Skywalker, but not a Jedi. He is a warrior, but not a Sith. He is powerful, but he kneels before no master. The First Order cannot claim him. The Resistance cannot use him. He is the first being in generations to truly be free, and that above all terrifies those who would control the future. Ben Solo, the last heir of a broken legacy, is no one's pawn. He does not seek to rule, but he does not bow. The war between Jedi and Sith, Republic and Empire, light and dark, it is beneath him now. There is only the path forward, the path neither side has dared to take. Balance is not the absence of conflict. It is the acceptance of all things. And so, he walks forward, not as Kylo Ren, not as a Jedi, but as something new. Ahsoka Tano never returned. Betrayed by the order she once called home, she walked away, carrying with her the knowledge that the Jedi were doomed, not because of the Sith, but because of their own blindness. They demanded obedience, yet refused to see their own corruption. They preached peace while leading an army. They spoke of justice but abandoned her when she needed them most. In another timeline, she might have found her way back to the light. She might have fought against the Empire in quiet defiance. But here, she sees the truth for what it is. Power is the only force that shapes the galaxy, and she will never be powerless again. When the Empire rises, she does not hide. She does not run. She watches. She learns. Darth Vader may be the Emperor's enforcer, but he is still a relic of the past, broken, tormented, bound by ghosts. Sidious commands through fear, but fear is fleeting. The Inquisitorius, the Emperor's tool for hunting Jedi, is filled with failures. Former Padawans turned into half-trained weapons, lacking direction, lacking true strength. Ahsoka sees what they cannot. The Sith rule through destruction, the Jedi through denial. But there is another way. She steps from the shadows, not as Fulcrum, not as a rebel, but as something far greater. A hunter, a strategist, a ruler. And when she offers her services to the Emperor, he does not hesitate. She takes command of the Inquisitorius, reshaping them into something far deadlier than Palpatine ever envisioned. The Jedi who remain, scattered, broken, are no longer just prey. They are raw material. They are futures waiting to be rewritten. The young ones, those hidden away in the outer rim, those left behind in the chaos of war, Ahsoka finds them first, not to kill, not to erase, to remake. Her Inquisitors are not mindless assassins. They are not Sith, nor are they Jedi. They are something new, and under Darth Tano, they become the future. She knows war better than any Imperial general. She has led armies. She has stood on the battlefield when heroes fell, when legends crumbled. She has seen what power unchecked becomes, and she has no intention of making the same mistakes. The Empire under her guidance is not built on fear alone. It is built on efficiency, precision, and control. Where Tarkin rules with brute force, she rules with intelligence. Where Vader hunts, she orchestrates. The rebellion never stands a chance. Leia Organa, the hopeful princess of Alderaan, does not become the face of the resistance. She is captured before she can rise, broken before she can inspire. The spark is crushed before it can ignite. The rebellion is not destroyed in grand battles, but in whispers, in disappearances, in betrayals. Leaders vanish before they can organize. Plans are unraveled before they are made. And as the Emperor watches his apprentice shape the galaxy, he knows what he has found. A successor. Vader does not see it at first. He believes her to be another tool, another blade to wield. But Ahsoka has no intention of serving forever. She has studied the Sith. She knows their weaknesses, their obsession with destruction, with rivalry, with cycles that endlessly repeat. She has no need for Vader's anger, no need for Palpatine's deception. Her empire will not fall to infighting, it will endure. The younglings she trains are not Sith Lords in the traditional sense. They do not hunger for power without discipline. They do not betray for the sake of betrayal. They do not cling to ancient traditions. They are patient, calculated. They are inevitable. One by one, her enemies fall. The rebellion dies before it can truly live. The Jedi who hide in the stars are found, but their deaths are not swift. They are tested, reshaped, given a choice to adapt or to die. Most choose death. A few do not. And from them a new order rises. Ahsoka does not seek the throne. She does not crave the title of Emperor. But when Palpatine's grip weakens, when Vader's presence becomes more liability than asset, she does what she must, not to destroy, to transform. Grievous was meant to be a weapon, a harbinger of destruction crafted by the Sith. But in another timeline, his fate is rewritten. Before his transformation into a ruthless cyborg general, Chimain Jai Shilal was a warrior of Kali, a leader, a protector. His people suffered under the oppression of the Republic-backed Yamri, and the Jedi, blinded by their own detachment, did nothing to help. In another life, this betrayal became his reason for hating them. But here, a different choice is made. Jedi intervention does not come in the form of opposition, but salvation. Rather than allowing Count Dooku to twist his suffering into rage, it is the Jedi who find him first. He is brought to Coruscant, not as a warlord in chains, but as a wounded soldier in need of healing. The Republic does not cast his people aside. It does not label the Kalish as aggressors. The Jedi Council, under the guidance of Master Plo Koon, listens. Grievous injuries are not ignored, nor are they exploited. Kaminoan scientists, under Jedi supervision, offer him the cybernetic enhancements he was meant to receive under Sith control, but without the need for manipulation. The technology that would have been used to enslave him is instead his liberation. His body is not reforged as a monstrosity, but as a miracle of medicine and engineering. His strength is restored, his mind unclouded by Sith deceit. He chooses the Jedi path not out of submission, but understanding. At first, there is resistance. Many on the Council believe he is too volatile, too dangerous. But Master Yoda, ever the wisest among them, sees potential. Fear leads to anger, the Grand Master says, but also does pain. Heal first, judge later. And so Grievous is given a choice, to return to Kali, to rule as he once did, or to stay, to learn, to evolve. He stays. His transformation is unlike any in Jedi history. The Force does not flow through him as it does the others, yet he moves with its precision. His training is rigorous, his skill unmatched. What the Sith once sought to weaponize, the Jedi refine. Grievous does not merely learn the ways of the Jedi, he reshapes them. His lightsabers, once meant to be trophies, become relics of honor. Each weapon he carries is not taken from fallen Jedi, but gifted to him in trust. They are symbols, not conquests. The lost blades of fallen warriors, kept to remember the Jedi who sacrificed their lives for the Republic. And when war inevitably comes, he stands at the forefront. The Clone Wars do not begin with a Sith-manipulated separatist movement, for Dooku never turns. Instead, the Republic faces new threats: pirate warlords, hidden Sith enclaves, the remnants of the Trade Federation's corruption. The galaxy remains fragile, but it does not fall into the same cycle of destruction. Grievous becomes something the galaxy has never seen before. A Jedi without the Force, a warrior bound not by mysticism, but by purpose. His presence challenges old traditions, forcing the Order to rethink what it means to be a Jedi. He embodies control, discipline, and honor in ways the Jedi never expected from an outsider. And yet his greatest struggle is not on the battlefield. The Council debates his very existence. Can one truly be a Jedi without the Force? Can cybernetics and machine enhancements coexist with the natural flow of life? Some argue that his presence is a dangerous precedent, that by accepting him, the Jedi are one step closer to abandoning their ways. But Grievous does not waver. He builds alliances where others see only divisions. The Kaminoans look to him as proof that their genetic experiments could one day move beyond soldiers bred for war. The Mandalorians, long in conflict with the Jedi, see him as a warrior they can respect. The clone troopers fight harder under his command, knowing that their general is not some untouchable force-wielding mystic, but a leader who understands battle in a way few Jedi ever could. And then, the inevitable test arrives. Darth Sidious still moves in the shadows. His machinations do not rely on Dooku nor on a single war. Instead, he seeks new methods of bringing the galaxy to its knees. The Jedi Council is fractured by internal debate, and the Republic still teeters on the edge of chaos. The Sith Lord waits for the perfect moment to strike, but this time he is met with something unexpected. Grievous, the one meant to be his greatest warrior, is now his greatest obstacle. The Sith's plans must change, their influence must spread in new ways. Palpatine watches from the shadows, waiting, calculating. But for the first time, his vision of galactic domination is not certain. The war continues. The struggle between light and dark is eternal. But in this timeline, Jedi Master Grievous stands where a monster once would have, and the galaxy is never the same. Plo Koon was a Jedi of reason, a warrior with the mind of a philosopher. His grasp of justice was absolute, his discipline unwavering. But in another timeline, his wisdom leads him down a path the Jedi fear to tread. The fall does not happen in anger, nor through betrayal. It begins with a question. The Clone Wars have stretched the Republic to its limits, and the Jedi Order struggles to maintain its ideals. Plo Koon sees the cracks forming, visions of a future where the Jedi, bound by tradition, are doomed to fail. He watches as the Senate grows more corrupt, as war reshapes the galaxy into something unrecognizable. He hears whispers of discontent, not just among the Jedi, but within himself. The Sith operate on deceit and destruction, but their philosophy is not without merit. Plo Koon studies the ancient texts, not in secrecy, but with the cold logic of a scholar. The Sith do not view passion as weakness. They do not reject power for the sake of humility. They mold the Force into a weapon of control, a philosophy of dominance. And for the first time, Plo Koon sees the Jedi Code not as wisdom, but as a prison. Knowledge should not be feared. The Sith understand this. He does not turn suddenly, nor does he hide his beliefs. He presents his findings to the Council, urging them to adapt, to wield their power with purpose rather than restraint. He does not argue for war or conquest, but for evolution. The Jedi cannot lead if they refuse to grow. They cannot guide if they deny the truth. But the Jedi Council, steeped in its traditions, refuses to listen. They call his studies dangerous. They warn him that his path leads only to corruption. Yoda himself confronts him, urging him to let go of these ideas before they consume him. But Plo Koon does not see darkness in his actions, only clarity. You fear what you do not understand, he tells them, and because of that fear, we will fall. And so when the time comes, he does not flee, he does not hide, he vanishes. It is not an exile, nor is it an escape. It is the beginning of something greater. He does not seek Sith Lords to guide him. He does not bow to the will of Palpatine. He builds something entirely new. The Sith ruled through fear. The Jedi ruled through restraint. But neither grasped the true nature of the Force. Under his leadership, the dark side is restructured. Not a philosophy of chaos, but of order. The Jedi rejected attachment, fearing the emotions that came with it. Plo Koon embraces it, not as a weakness, but as a source of strength. A Sith empire is not built on emotion alone. It is built on knowledge, precision, and understanding. The galaxy shifts. The first followers are those who were already outcasts, scholars who questioned the Force, Jedi who found their teachings restrictive. warriors who sought more than blind obedience. His order is not built on apprentices slaughtering their masters, nor on deception and secrecy. It is built on the idea that power, when controlled, is the key to prosperity. And from the shadows, Darth Koon rises. His influence spreads, not through conquest, but through strategy. The Jedi Order is slow to adapt, bound by ancient traditions that no longer fit the galaxy they claim to protect. The Republic, still tangled in war, finds itself unable to resist the quiet, methodical rise of this new force. When the Jedi finally realize the scale of the threat, it is too late. By the time they attempt to strike, Darth Koon has already rewritten history. Jedi texts are no longer sacred. Their teachings have been dissected, restructured, and repurposed into something entirely new. Their wisdom is not erased but adapted, made stronger, made efficient. The old ways are gone, replaced by a philosophy that does not limit itself to light or dark, but uses both as tools. And when the inevitable confrontation comes, it is not a war of blades, but of ideologies. The Jedi fear corruption, Darth Koon does not. The Jedi fear attachment, Darth Koon sees it as a weapon. The Jedi fear knowledge. Darth Koon understands that knowledge, in the hands of those who can wield it properly, is the greatest power of all. The Republic does not fall to the Sith, nor does it succumb to Jedi influence. It bends to the will of the scholar who mastered both. The Sith were meant to be erased. That was the goal of the Jedi, to bring peace, to remove the great enemy, to ensure darkness never ruled again. But what happens to a galaxy when its shadow is stripped away? In another timeline, Darth Bane never rises. The Sith, fractured and unorganized, never establish the rule of two. The ancient Sith Lords, too numerous and too greedy, continue their infighting until they devour themselves. There is no Palpatine, no Vader, no Empire. The Jedi win before the war ever begins. And yet, victory does not bring prosperity. Without the Sith, the Jedi Order faces no true enemy, no need to sharpen their skills, no wars to fight, no threats to challenge their doctrine. For thousands of years they grow complacent. Their power remains unquestioned, their decisions absolute. Without conflict, the Jedi Order ceases to evolve. The Republic, once dependent on Jedi wisdom, finds itself suffocating under their rule. What began as a noble council of peacekeepers turns into something far less noble, an order of untouchable, unchallenged overseers. Their presence, once a beacon of hope, now feels like chains tightening around the necks of those they claim to protect. The Jedi believe they have done what is right. With no Sith, there is no darkness, but the galaxy does not exist in absolutes. They outlaw the study of the dark side entirely. Any Force user who dares to explore its teachings is labeled a heretic. Forbidden knowledge is erased from history. Holocrons that contain not only Sith secrets but alternative philosophies are destroyed. The Force is reshaped into a single, rigid ideology. At first there is peace, but over time something begins to shift. The Jedi become rulers not by conquest, but by inertia. They sit in the Senate, their influence growing beyond what even they understand. They do not govern directly, but every senator knows the truth. Defying Jedi wisdom is political suicide. Laws that once served the people now serve the ideals of the Order. And while the Jedi do not call themselves tyrants, they do not allow opposition either. They do not see the danger. Without the Sith, the balance of the Force is shattered in a way that no prophecy ever foresaw. The Jedi do not need a war to destroy themselves. They need only time. The first cracks appear in whispers. The outer rim grows restless. planets begin to question Jedi authority. While they do not rebel outright, their loyalty wavers. They speak of freedom, of governing without Jedi influence. But every attempt to establish independence is met with resistance, not by an army, not by fleets, but by the silent weight of Jedi decree. Jedi do not rule, yet no decision is made without their guidance. And then the first true rebellion begins. It is not a war of Sith Lords nor a conflict between Jedi and dark side warlords. It is something far more insidious. The common people rise, not against oppression, but against stagnation. They are not angry at the Jedi's power, but at their refusal to change. The galaxy does not need warriors. It needs leaders. But the Jedi, bound to their ancient traditions, refuse to step aside. The battle does not begin with starships. It begins in the Senate, with laws, with debates, with slow, careful movements that push against Jedi doctrine. Planets that were once loyal begin to drift away. Systems once devoted to peacekeepers now question their authority. The Jedi, unchallenged for so long, are suddenly on the defensive. But it is already too late. Without the Sith, without an external enemy, the Jedi Order is forced to face the one thing they never prepared for: irrelevance. They try to regain control. Some attempt diplomacy, others double down on their authority, but nothing stops what has already begun. The Jedi do not fall in battle. They are not overthrown by war. They wither, and in the end, the galaxy moves forward without them. For thousands of years, the Jedi Order had stood as the guardians of peace, their influence woven into the fabric of galactic civilization. Their temples, their laws, their philosophies, all of it served as the great barrier between raw power and the chaos it could unleash. But what if they had never existed? What if the Force had been left unchecked, its wielders scattered, its knowledge fragmented, with no guiding hand to shape it into something greater? Without the Jedi, the Force would still call to those sensitive to its presence. It would whisper to those born with the gift, binding them to its currents, yet leaving them without direction. Some would discover their power through instinct, bending the world around them with nothing but willpower and emotion. Some would see it as a curse, visions they could not control, strength they could not temper, and others, the ambitious and the ruthless, would see it as the key to dominion. Without the Jedi's training, without their teachings of restraint, there would be no balance, only scattered Force users across the stars, each wielding their power according to their own needs, their own desires. Some would try to become leaders, gathering followers in cults devoted to their interpretations of the Force. Others would become warlords, carving out fiefdoms where their abilities made them gods among mortals. And then there would be those who sought nothing but destruction. The galaxy had always known war. From the conflicts of ancient civilizations to the brutal conquests of warlords, the struggle for control was eternal. But in a world without Jedi, wars would not be fought with blasters and starships alone. They would be fought with the raw, unchained power of the Force. Entire planets could be burned in the fury of those who knew no restraint. Battlefields would be torn apart, not by coordinated strategy, but by the unchecked rage of those whose power had never been tempered by discipline. Empires would rise and fall in the span of decades, their leaders replaced by whoever could wield the Force most effectively, their rule secured by strength alone. But beyond the wars, beyond the destruction, there would be another horror, one more insidious than warlords and conquerors. The Force is not merely a tool, it is a presence, a living will that binds all things together. Without the Jedi to guide it, to serve as its conduit, its influence would spread in unpredictable ways. Force nexuses, those places of concentrated energy, would twist and evolve, shaping those who dwelled near them. Entire civilizations might rise with strange abilities, their people unknowingly molded by the Force itself. Cultures would emerge, their beliefs centered around ancient instincts rather than structured wisdom. But without balance, the Force does not create peace. It demands equilibrium. And in a galaxy where no one wields it with understanding, the Force would act on its own. Visions, prophecies, unnatural occurrences, these would shape history in ways no one could predict. Wars might be fought over Force-sensitive bloodlines, entire planets exterminated out of fear that their inhabitants could one day become too powerful. The galactic underworld would become something more than smuggling and crime. Assassins wielding abilities beyond comprehension, rulers enforcing their will through the unseen power that terrified their subjects. And then there is the question of the Sith. Without Jedi to oppose them, the Sith might never have existed as they were known. The rule of two, the great structure of the Sith Order, was born in defiance of Jedi domination. Without that opposition, Sith might have never formed into an organized philosophy. But the dark side would not be absent. It would be everywhere. The lust for power, the hunger for more, the ability to break the laws of nature itself. These would be discovered over and over again by individuals who thought themselves alone. The dark side would become something primordial, an unspoken force of nature manifesting in different ways across different cultures, and with no Jedi to oppose them, those who learned to wield it best would become the galaxy's rulers, their reigns built on suffering. But perhaps the greatest tragedy would not be the wars, nor the destruction. The greatest tragedy would be knowledge lost forever. The Jedi Order, for all its flaws, preserved wisdom. Their archives held centuries of understanding. Their training ensured that the Force was wielded with responsibility. In their absence, there would be no grand repository of knowledge, only scattered fragments, conflicting teachings passed down like legends rather than truth. Entire techniques, entire philosophies would vanish before they could ever be perfected. The Force itself would become unknowable, its mysteries locked behind ignorance and superstition. And in this world, the Force would not be a blessing. It would be a curse. A galaxy without the Jedi is not a galaxy of freedom. It is a galaxy enslaved by its own power. Without guidance, the Force does not unify. It divides. It consumes. It breaks civilizations apart, leaving only chaos in its wake. The Jedi did not create balance because they were righteous. They created balance because the Force, left unchecked, is a storm without an eye. And in the absence of those who could calm it, that storm would rage forever. For generations, the Jedi clung to the prophecy of the Chosen One, a figure destined to bring balance to the Force. But what if the Jedi misunderstood its meaning? What if the prophecy was never about the destruction of the Sith, but rather the transcendence of both Jedi and Sith alike? The Jedi Order, bound by their rigid doctrines, believed balance meant the eradication of the dark side. The Sith, in their endless hunger for power, sought to overthrow the Jedi and impose their own rule. Both sides believed they were the rightful inheritors of the Force's will. But what if neither were meant to last? The Skywalker bloodline was no accident. The Force had shaped Anakin's creation not to destroy, but to evolve. He was never meant to serve the Jedi or the Sith. He was meant to surpass them. Yet the galaxy was not ready for such a transformation. The Jedi feared what they could not control, and the Sith sought only their own gain. Caught between these two ancient forces, Anakin was manipulated, broken, and ultimately shaped into a tool for another's vision. Had he been allowed to fulfill his true purpose, the cycle of war would have ended, not through domination, but through a new understanding of the Force itself. The Chosen One was never meant to restore balance by tipping the scales in favor of one side, but by forging a new path entirely. Perhaps Luke Skywalker came closer to this truth. He was raised in ignorance of Jedi tradition, free from their dogma, yet he was also untouched by Sith corruption. He walked the middle path unknowingly, guided not by rigid teachings, but by instinct and experience. He rejected absolute power, refused the temptation of the dark side, and questioned the Jedi's past failures. His journey was not about choosing a side. It was about moving beyond the binary nature of the conflict. But even Luke was shackled by the past. His attachment to the Jedi's legacy prevented him from seeing the full scope of the prophecy. He rebuilt the Order, only for it to fall again. The cycle continued, proving that as long as Jedi and Sith existed as opposing ideologies, there could be no true peace. Balance was never about one side defeating the other. It was about realizing that both light and dark existed within all beings, that the Force was neither good nor evil, it simply was. The true Chosen One would not be the destroyer of the Sith or the savior of the Jedi, but the one who rendered both obsolete. If Anakin had embraced this path, the Jedi Order would have crumbled, not through war, but through irrelevance. He would have exposed their weaknesses, shattered their blind adherence to tradition, and freed the Force from their control. The Sith would have fallen not to a Jedi's blade, but to their own inability to adapt. A new order, neither Jedi nor Sith, could have risen from the ashes. One that understood power was not inherently corrupt, but that discipline was needed to wield it responsibly. One that saw emotion not as a weakness, but as a source of strength when tempered with wisdom. The tragedy of the Skywalkers was that they were bound to a destiny misunderstood by those around them. Anakin, Luke, even Ben Solo, all struggled against the expectations placed upon them by those who failed to see the prophecy's true meaning. Each was a product of an age that could not accept a future beyond its traditions. Had the prophecy been properly interpreted, the galaxy would not have endured endless war. The Jedi would not have sought control through peace, and the Sith would not have sought power through destruction. The Force would have been freed from the chains of ideology. The cycle could have ended. But the galaxy was not ready, and so history repeated itself. For all the wars fought in its name, the Force itself remains silent. It does not speak in words, nor does it declare its intentions. The Jedi believe it is their duty to interpret its will, to maintain balance by suppressing the dark side. The Sith see it as a tool to be bent, twisted to serve their own ambitions. But what if both have misunderstood? What if the Force is not something to be controlled or defined, but an entity beyond the limits of morality, beyond the conflicts of Jedi and Sith? Every choice, every moment of divergence creates a new possibility. Anakin taking his father's hand instead of striking him down, Windu choosing power over principle, Yoda forging an empire instead of hiding in exile. These are not random accidents, nor mere thought experiments. They are the nature of the Force itself. The Jedi spoke of balance as though it were a fixed point, a perfect state to be maintained. But balance is not stagnation. It is movement, change, the constant shifting of power between order and chaos. It is the tide that rises and falls, neither inherently good nor evil, only inevitable. To suggest the Force prefers one side over the other is to misunderstand its very nature. The Sith sought to impose their will upon the galaxy, bending the Force to serve their desires. But the Jedi were no different. They demanded obedience to their teachings, declaring their interpretation to be the only truth. The chosen one, the prophecy, the endless cycle of war, all of it stemmed from this singular failure, the belief that the Force must be controlled. But what if the Force was never meant to be mastered? What if, instead of guiding destiny, it is shaped by the choices of those who wield it? The idea that it has a will assumes it is conscious, that it moves events toward a predetermined conclusion. Yet time and again the galaxy proves otherwise. The Sith rise, the Jedi fall, then the cycle repeats. If the Force had a will, why would it allow such suffering? Perhaps the truth is something far more dangerous. Perhaps there is no grand design, no guiding hand, only the natural order of things. The Force does not favor light or dark, Jedi or Sith. It moves forward because it must, adapting, reshaping, surviving. And if this is true, then what are the Jedi? What are the Sith? Both claim to serve the Force, yet both believe they must control it. But the Force is neither a god nor a master. It is simply the current that carries all things forward. Those who attempt to stand against it, to hold it in place, are inevitably swept away. The rise of Darth Vader, the fall of the Republic, the destruction of the Jedi, these were not punishments, not corrections by the Force. They were consequences. The same could be said for the Empire's fall, for the rise of Luke Skywalker, for every moment that shifted the galaxy's fate. The Force does not command, it reacts. And so, what of these alternate realities? What of Yoda ruling with absolute authority, of a redeemed Dooku guiding the Republic, of Maul fighting for the light? Are these mistakes? Or are they too the Force finding new ways to evolve, new possibilities to explore? Perhaps none of these realities are wrong. Perhaps all of them are true. The Force does not choose, it only moves. The Jedi believed in destiny, the Sith believed in power. But in the end, only one truth remains. The Force endures. The galaxy has always bent to the will of the Force. It is the undercurrent of existence, binding together life, thought, and destiny itself. Jedi and Sith alike claim to understand its depths, shaping their beliefs around their interpretations. But the Force is not bound by their philosophies. It flows without allegiance, shifting in ways even the most powerful cannot fully predict. A single choice, a moment of hesitation, an alternative path, can send ripples through reality, altering what was meant to be. History remembers the Jedi as guardians of peace, the Sith as architects of destruction, and the Skywalker lineage as the fulcrum upon which the fate of the galaxy turns. But these were only outcomes of specific moments, decisions made under the weight of expectation and circumstance. What if those choices had unfolded differently? What if the Force had whispered a new path, or a single decision had splintered into an unforeseen reality? This journey is not about rewriting history, nor is it an exercise in speculation for its own sake. It is an exploration of the possibilities hidden beneath the surface of fate. The Force does not dictate a singular future. It is a current that shifts, bends, and reacts to the will of those who channel it. A Jedi Master who chose power over restraint. A Sith Lord who sought harmony instead of dominion. A warrior who abandoned the battle, allowing another to claim his destiny. There is no such thing as inevitability in a universe driven by free will. The Clone Wars were not destined to end in betrayal, just as Anakin Skywalker was not fated to become Darth Vader. The rebellion's triumph was not assured, nor was Luke Skywalker's place as the galaxy's savior. These events were shaped by decisions, by individuals standing at the crossroads of history, forced to decide in an instant what their legacy would be. Consider the moment on Cloud City when Darth Vader extended his hand to his son, offering him the chance to rule together. The Luke Skywalker that history remembers chose defiance, allowing himself to fall into the abyss rather than surrender to darkness. But the difference between light and shadow is often a single breath, a flicker of thought that might have gone another way. In another reality, Luke's hand does not retreat. His fingers tighten around Vader's, and in that moment, he does not see a tyrant. He sees his father. The Alliance loses its greatest hero. The Emperor gains an adversary he never expected, and the galaxy spirals into an era ruled by Darth Skywalker, a Sith Lord more powerful than any before him. Or take the moment in the Senate chamber when Mace Windu stood over a wounded Palpatine, his blade raised, justice within reach. The Jedi Order had spent centuries teaching restraint, preaching against passion, warning of the dangers of absolute power. But Windu saw beyond their doctrine. He saw what needed to be done, and for a fraction of a second, something within him broke. His lightsaber did not waver. The stroke was swift, final. Darth Sidious never rose again, but the war did not end. Without the Sith Lord to hold it together, the Republic fractured. The Jedi, no longer bound by their code, became enforcers of order, wielding control in the name of peace. The age of the Jedi did not die that night, but neither did it survive unchanged. Some shifts in destiny are subtle, a word left unspoken, a warning that goes unheard. When Qui-Gon Jinn brought Anakin Skywalker before the Jedi Council, his belief in the boy's potential was unshakable. The Council was less certain, and their doubts were clear. Yet, had one voice in that chamber spoken louder, had Yoda perhaps given in to instinct instead of reason, the decision might have been different. Anakin would never have trained as a Jedi. The chosen one, left adrift, might have been discovered by another, someone with no intention of shaping him into a Jedi, but into something else entirely. Even those long thought to be bound to darkness could have walked another path. Darth Maul, raised in hatred, shaped by pain, was never given the chance to see the Force beyond the Sith's doctrine. Had he been taken from Dathomir by the Jedi instead of Darth Sidious, what might he have become? A warrior for justice, wielding his twin blades for a purpose beyond vengeance? Or would the fire within him have always sought an outlet, no matter the guidance he received? There are infinite realities hidden behind the choices that define the galaxy's history, paths untaken, victories undone, betrayals that never came to pass. The Force does not choose sides. It does not demand one outcome over another. It whispers, it nudges, it guides, but it does not control. That power lies in the hands of those who wield it. Not to destroy, but to transform. These stories are not corrections, nor are they mistakes. They are the echoes of possibilities, the voices of fates that might have been. To understand the true power of the Force, one must see beyond what was and consider what could have been. And so we begin. The greatest deception in the history of the galaxy is the belief that the Force has a singular purpose. The Jedi spoke of harmony. The Sith spoke of strength. But what if both were wrong? What if the Force was never meant to be confined to such absolutes? Throughout the ages, the Force has been called a river, an energy field, the breath of all life. But the truth is more complex. The Force does not judge. It does not punish. It does not favor the strong or the righteous. It simply exists, an ever-shifting current of potential, waiting to be shaped. The Jedi sought to preserve peace, yet in doing so, they shackled themselves to tradition. The Sith embraced power, but in their hunger, they lost control. Each believed they understood the true nature of the Force. Each believed they were acting in accordance with its will. But the Force has no will. It does not command. It does not impose destiny. It only reacts to those who wield it. Some believed Anakin Skywalker was meant to bring balance to the Force. But what is balance, if not a constant shifting of power? Luke Skywalker resisted the dark side, but was the darkness truly meant to be rejected? In other timelines, Yoda ruled instead of retreating. Windu conquered instead of falling. Dooku reformed instead of rebelling. And in each case, the galaxy was shaped not by the Force, but by the choices of those who touched it. The Force does not whisper in absolutes. It does not demand allegiance. It does not carve a single path through time. It is both chaos and order, light and shadow, destruction and renewal. The Jedi sought to suppress its wild nature, fearing what lay beyond their control. The Sith embraced that chaos, believing it to be the path to strength. Neither understood that the Force was never meant to serve. It was always meant to change. Not to destroy, but to transform. That is the lesson hidden within the Force. The Jedi saw balance as the absence of darkness. The Sith saw strength as the destruction of weakness. But neither saw the deeper truth. The Force was never about one side prevailing over the other. It was always about transformation. The history of the galaxy has unfolded in countless ways. In one path, Darth Vader was redeemed, and the Sith fell. In another, Luke Skywalker never turned back from Cloud City, and darkness consumed the stars. In yet another, the Sith ruled unchallenged, unburdened by opposition. And beyond them all, there exists a world where neither the Jedi nor the Sith ever rose. Every possibility, every choice made or abandoned, is simply another shape the Force takes. The Force does not dictate the fate of the galaxy. It does not impose a destiny. It does not whisper commands to those who listen. It only offers power, waiting to be shaped by those who reach for it. Every Jedi who ignites a lightsaber, every Sith who draws upon the dark side, every being who touches the Force alters it in some way. It is a mirror reflecting the choices of those who wield it. The Jedi saw it as something to protect. The Sith saw it as something to dominate. But the truth is that the Force was never meant to be either. To believe the Force is only light or only dark is to misunderstand its nature entirely. A choice remains, a final one. To wield the Force is not to serve it, nor to be enslaved by it. It is not a path of purity, nor a descent into corruption. It is an acceptance of change, an embrace of the unknown. The greatest mistake of the Jedi and the Sith was their belief that they had mastered the Force. The greatest truth is that no one ever could. The final choice is not the Force's to make. It belongs to those who stand at the precipice of power, to those who hold the weight of destiny in their hands, to those who must decide in the end whether they will destroy or transform.